Elaine's going to introduce our great speakers today. So
thank you all for coming tonight, and also thank you to our speakers for making it. We appreciate it. So if you guys want to come up here, you're welcome. We have Mr. Jose Goldner, who is a partner at First Capital. He has multiple years of experience in, honestly, a lot of areas of business, and owns multiple companies as well. And his business partner, Jack Moran, who's the founder of Ecological Improvements and Tree Fruit. And we'll just leave you with that for a little bit. If you guys can talk a little bit about your experiences. Founders Club is for people that are interested in startups or already have startups, earn some money with that. So we're going to do a little question and answer session at the end, if that's okay. And
fantastic. Yeah, I'll get started, just kind of walk you guys through my experience a little bit, and then I'll talk about how I met Jose and then, his background, and we'll go from there and just kind of wing it. Always kind of been an entrepreneur deep down inside. Like I say to people, I'm completely unemployable. I think I got fired from 9 out of 10 of the jobs that I ever worked. Was like, as a kid, always like starting lemonade stands, shoveling for money, delivering ice to people's boats, like trying to figure out how to make money just for my buddies and I. And then going into college, still had that in the back of my mind, but had a ton of pressure from everyone around me. You got to get a good job. You need to have a career, start thinking about those things. So, those, I call them limitations, were getting instilled in my mind. Like maybe it's a crazy idea to think that I can start my own business. So started going down the path that everyone else was telling me to go down, which was, looking into environmental science, working on a cruise ship. There were so many different ideas I was trying to figure out in college, and I had this anxiety of what am I going to do. So in the background was still trying to start up a couple businesses, and I think the first one I did was when I was 18 years old. We tried to start a music festival in Cape Cod. It was like a $1.5 million raise that I would have had to do. Went to a couple investors to try to raise the money. They're like, you're an 18-year-old. I had no clue what I was doing. There was really no chance. Looking back, I would have approached that differently. I found that a good lesson that I've learned later on is you really don't need as much capital as you think to start a business. There's a bunch of ways to leverage marketing and sell pre-construction and sell your idea before you even have the idea, and utilize that capital to get the idea executed. But yeah, learned through that process that it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought to start a business and raise that money. So again, going through college, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I had a professor, I was sitting in the back of this class. It was about environmental policy. Super boring class, honestly, and I would just sleep in the back of it. And I don't know if it was divine intervention or what, but I woke up one day during his class and he was talking about how there was this $15 million contract available at the beach near our school. I went to school in Massachusetts at a military school called Mass Maritime. It's like the Citadel. And his point to us was that erosion is this massive industry that's growing, and there's not many companies that are doing this kind of work. And we should get jobs with the few companies that are doing it because it's a growing opportunity. The light bulb went off in my head, $15 million to do a marsh restoration, do some plantings in a marsh. I could get the wheels are spinning in my brain. I can get 5 of my buddies. We'll go buy the plants, we'll install them, and I'm gonna be fucking rich. So stayed after with him, and I was basically what would stop me from getting that contract? And he's like, really, your degree, you're gonna be qualified for that kind of work. But you need to know the Clean Water Act. There's all this permitting that you have to go through. So that was my first mentor. I started leveraging his resources and his experience and getting a secondhand education on how to enter this business. Now, it wasn't the first try that led me to the business that I have today. I tried a bunch of different models at first. It was a consulting business, writing the permits, figured out quickly it takes a lot of training to be a consultant. There's a lot of things that you need to learn. So how am I going to scale this business up if I have to teach every person that I hire the thousands of hours that I'm putting into learning how to do these permits? So I was trying to get there quick, so that didn't seem like a good path. Then tried to start a nursery, growing the plants that were utilized for these marsh restorations. which there was a big need for them. We found out when we were trying to get the contracts that not many people sold them. So again, recognize this opportunity, this market that hadn't been capitalized on, that people weren't offering this service, this blue ocean of opportunity, and figuring out how to put this business together. So through that process, again, ran into raising money. It was going to take $2 million to build this nursery. I didn't really know what I was doing. But finding mentors along the way, finding experts that could give me the knowledge in order to start stringing this business together. And that's how I got introduced to Briggs Capital, which is an investment bank up in Massachusetts. Family friend of mine, I was working for him at the time, linked me up. He wanted to invest in the idea, linked me up with his M&A guy who went through the business and started giving me my next level of mentorship. And you can see the reoccurring theme here, finding mentors is really key. So he was teaching me how to write up a business plan and how to do a financial summary and get the documents down on paper to model the business out before we raise the money to do it. So got all that done, and again, going to the table to try to raise a couple $1 million, and I start getting cold feet. I've been bullshitting my way this whole time. What am I going to do when I actually have to run this nursery? I don't know anything about this. And luckily, COVID hit. And kind of derailed that whole idea. So I had a lot of time to think during COVID, how am I going to restructure this business? And that's when I started exploring models that require super low capital. So how can I start a business and get into this industry without taking someone else's money on and figure this out on my own? So taking more of a sales and marketing approach and brokering deals and selling something that I don't have and using the capital that I get for selling that to make the opportunity happen. So I was thinking about business in a completely different way. And that was, that turned into the business that I have today is kind of following that model. We did after our, first year, I drove down to Florida, packed up my life, lived in Airbnbs for a year with $12,000 on a credit card, no money to my name, and I was just determined no matter what happens, we're going to figure out how to make this business happen. And that's really the game of entrepreneurship. It doesn't matter the opportunity. It's having the resilience and the determination that whatever gets thrown in front of you, you're going to find a solution and get over it until you hit the goal that you're trying to achieve. And it started out super brutal, didn't know how we were going to put things together, but then, little solutions and little light start showing itself at the end of the tunnel. And I think, within a year and a half of going down and starting that opportunity down in my car, we made a couple $1 million, got jobs on Augusta National, Trump International. We're doing installs next to the president. And things just started clicking. But, each new barrier that we tried to knock down through new adversity in front of us and new challenges. And I started learning that system of when you want to get to the next level, the universe is going to throw challenges in front of you. And those challenges are the really the stomping ground for the knowledge that you're going to need. That adversity that you go through is going to be the knowledge that you need to get to the next level. So it's really a learning experience. But yeah, so once I made a couple $1 million, the guys that were my mentors were basically congrats, let's go down to Panama. So we went down to Panama on a trip with all these high rollers, and that's where I met Jose, which I linked up with him immediately. My intuition told me that this is a guy that could help me kind of take my company to the next level. And so I asked him to help me out with the business. I was trying to figure out how to build a relationship with him, and I can talk about that afterwards, relationship building and when you see an opportunity with someone, how to get them on your side. But yeah, I think I would pass it to Jose now and kind of give your background, and then we can just kind of roll with it from there, what we're doing now and blah, blah, blah. So this guy's way more impressive than I am.
No, that's a great story. So Jack came down and he's like, can you help me with the business? And I said, my first question is, are you an entrepreneur? So that's the thing you guys are going through now. Just the fact that you're here is awesome because you're curious, right? But the level of risk, the threshold of pain, right? And the relentlessness you have to have and the mindset and the process-oriented thinking and the power of making decisions every day and the discipline and the habits, all of those things together is like what I call, that's the material of a great entrepreneur. And if you think, am I an entrepreneur? That's the first question. Is you should read. What I do in my classes when I teach entrepreneurship is I teach biographies or autobiographies. I'll teach Steve Jobs. I'll teach Warren Buffett. I'll analyze the personalities in front of people, because you're going to find people that are more like you, right? And so you're going to communicate with, not every mentor suits you. So the first thing is like getting a mentor that suits you. Like Jack, I'm like, Jack, I did that when I was your age. You're going to go down a rat hole. Now I'll come with you. We'll crash and we'll hit every single tree limb on the way down. And so as a teacher, you got to be patient and be like, okay, we're going to hit everything. And then I'll be there and say, I'm not going to tell you I told you so, but, I understand when I meet a mentoree, like, okay, this is the path this person's going to take. And so the thing is to understand people that are, books and mentors before you so you can understand, like, okay, this is my way of thinking. I'm extroverted. I'm introverted. Myers-Briggs, am I concrete sequential? Am I abstract random? Am I a strategist versus an operations guy? Which, you're always in conflict in business because you can be a great strategist, but you really don't know how to operate anything. And I joke around all the time. I'm like, I can't even run my household. I'm married to a lawyer and she's a CPA and really good with money, and she runs my whole entire life. I don't even know when I leave my house if I go left or right without her saying, go left, go this way. But that's not my job. My job is to think and to strategize and look at markets and to understand, global things that are happening, So I think understanding other personalities before you will give you great blessings and great strengths. Read about entrepreneurs. Read about their makeup, right? Because that is the way that you're going to be able to perceive who's going to be able to help you. I couldn't sit next to a Warren Buffett and be like, I'm going to learn from this guy. I can have a great conversation with him, but that's not my personality type. I'm more likely to learn from a Ted Turner. They call him the mouth from the South. One of his kids went to school in the Citadel. Like, he's more fast-paced. He's more of a sales guy. He's more business development. He's more a strategist. And he would download his operation and do a process and to people below him, right? So I learned very quickly how to grab an idea, vet it out, and turn it into an operational situation where I have the people running the business. And I teach a class that's just how to own a business versus run a business. Because I'm not good at running businesses, honestly. I'm good at owning businesses and having an idea and putting it into place. And I'm meticulous about a manual of operations and a strategy operation and documenting everything. That saved me. But I learned it from these guys that had a $300 million a year company. And they're like, Jose, you're going to tell something to somebody and you're going to forget about it. You're going to come 2 months later, did you do that? Like, no, we forgot about it. So the idea is like, it's gone, right? So documenting gives you the freedom of time, because I tell you one thing and that's it. I can forget about it a little bit and then I'm just checking the metrics. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do that? So that's like, you need to understand your personality and where are you? Are you over here in strategy, big ideas, abstract, random? Are you concrete, sequential, operational? So you need to be able to straddle those kind of things.
What was your entrepreneurial journey? I think everyone wants to know what you do.
Well, so I studied literature. And when I finished college, my father said, well, he was a lawyer, entrepreneur. So I learned at home how to be an entrepreneur. He said, well, you pissed 4 years of tuition money away because your mom said study literature, study what you love, because my mom was kind of a little bit hippie-ish. Son, study what you love. And so I studied poetry, fiction. I got a minor in ethics, and I studied literature, American and British. So that's what I loved. And then I got out of college. I'm like, well, here I am, no job. So I started teaching, and I couldn't, in Latin America, you're barely making a living. Teachers that were 50 years old, they had 3 jobs. And so I'm like, so I started at the bottom. So what a great advantage. Like, there was no way for me to go further down in terms of pay. So I'm like, okay, well, I can do anything, right? So I started a job in a internet, because the internet was beginning back in those days in 94, 95, literally beginning. So anybody was an expert. So I got a job. I worked 8 months in a business. And I decided, you know what? I'm so creative and so gung-ho about things that I want to start my own business. And I started that business, and I decided to go into voice over the internet. And voice over the internet was beginning Skype and WhatsApp and all these. So that it was, back then, it was traditional networks. And this was the first time that a phone call was going over the internet. So I started telecom companies, and I started opening up channels in Latin America, bringing minutes from all over the world into these little tiny servers using satellite, because there was no fiber back then. We took the company, I was like 27 years old, we took the company public, we made a couple $100 million, and I was like, wow. It was like, I mean, I was burning the candle on both ends. I did not, like, and I told Jack, what are you talking about, you're tired? You know, when we're running crazy, because you learn the speed, right? And so I was working 16, but I was running on adrenaline. I just loved working, and I still do. I'm like, Sunday, let's work. What else is there to do? This is fun, right? Not to say that we don't have fun, right? But, so anyway, so that was kind of my journey. And then I was very lucky that I had great mentors. And they taught me systematic thinking. They're like, Jose, you're a loose cannon. You shoot, bah, 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 everything in the air, and you got to have a cleanup crew. That's what he called it. You got to have somebody like, what do we do with this? What do we do with that? Like, I'd be like, oh, I got a great idea. I was drinking with my friends. And, I'd come home and I'd give it to my accountant. My accountant goes, you ready to lose money for 6-7 years? And I'm like, really? God, I must have been really drunk that last night, right? Because you're going to have an idea, and you're going to have, we call it drinking the Kool-Aid, when you think you have the greatest idea ever, and then you run it by other people, and they're like, this is your idea. Here it is in black and white. So you need to balance your personality to vet things out in your own brain, because you can literally like become insular and think you've got the greatest idea ever, and it's not. So those are kind of like things that I learned early. When Jack came to me, I'm like, do you have a business? You know what I mean? The first thing is I said, I want you to come and live in Panama for a year, because I want to see, do you get up in the morning every day at 6 o'clock in the morning and start working? I want to see you here drinking coffee every day at 6 in the morning. I just wanted to see if he had the makeup of an entrepreneur. And the makeup of an entrepreneur is, it's all about habits. If you don't have the habits and you're like, oh, you get up at 9, 10, you're chilling, this, that, you're that kind of person, you're not an entrepreneur, sorry. An entrepreneur is running at another speed. You think different, you act different. Like, I don't have friends that are corporate guys. All my friends are crazy entrepreneurs. You've got to be a little bit on the edge. That's just your personality. Read about entrepreneurs, And that's a little bit biased, right? But anyway, so he said, I'm moving. And he moved right next to me in the house in Panama, in the middle of nowhere, little fishing village. And, so a year went by, and I said, this is what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to do a business plan, a manual of operations. I'll teach you the numbers. And then I'm going to get on the first plane and go to the first meeting with you. And when I went to the first meeting, I was like, I'm going to tell you yes or no. There's a business or there's not a business here. And I said, shit, you're in a $44 billion a year problem, erosion. There is a business. So being in a business that has a big market, the first thing is, what problem am I solving? How big is the market? What is the size of the opportunity? Right? So you got to know, like, economically where a country is and what they're doing. Like, I love real estate. It's my favorite thing ever. I look at, no matter, even if I'm on vacation, my wife's like, can't you be a normal person and just sit in this pool and drink something and just chill? No, I'm going on a real estate tour. I get a broker and I'm like, running around. She's like, this is no fun. But I want to look at real estate. I want to look at pricing. I want to look at construction costs. I want to look at, you know what I mean? Like, I want to look at the curve of what's happened in transactions. Like, you get obsessed like this, but I can come to Charleston and tell you, I don't see a real estate opportunity here. I see an overinflated. So you naturally build a criteria for whatever business you're in as an entrepreneur. You become agnostic. Like, I can walk in a restaurant, I count the tables, I count the turnover, I count the what I think the average price is per ticket on each person. Like, that's just what happens to you. You know what I mean? There's no off switch. And so you build this criteria that helps you to become agnostic. That's why Richard Branson, how many businesses does he have? 20, 30? Who knows, right? I know guys that know him. And he's just like, he'll always listen to a new idea. If it's good, he'll cut you off in 5 minutes and say, like, sorry, not interested. Because he'll immediately, that's how fast he can put it together with his criteria and say, there's nothing here, right? And hedge fund guys and venture capital guys, and I do venture capital. So I'll listen to your idea and I ask you 3 or 4 questions and the meeting's over. It's over. You know, I don't see it. I don't see the connection. So anyway, his problem was at $44 billion. I said, you got something. You know what I mean? And so all that I help them to do, and this is what I love to do. I'm a teacher in the end, but I love to empower them with knowledge to take the business in from strategy to operations, and then it's all about the metrics. How many phone calls did you make? How many emails went out? How many proposals went out? What's your pipeline? Is it going from 5 million to 10 million to 15, 20 million, right? Because in the end, if you stay in that abstract world of ideas and you don't download it into specific measurable results day to day, that's where the habits come in, you're not going to succeed. And then, you know, a guy told me one time, he said, Jose, you're really, you know, you're personable, you go out and you know how to connect with people, and you're great at developing businesses and relationships and all that, but you're not going to be successful like that. I was stumped. I'm like, wow, what do you mean? And he said, because you don't know how to multiply yourself. You've got to, it's very different if you go to a company or you go to somebody, you go, I can make 1,000 of myself. I can replicate myself. I can share my knowledge and replicate it with 1,000 people that do what I do. And I go, what? I went home that night and I was like, oh my God. So he taught me, you got to do scripting. You got to do the writing. You got to have the system in place. So all of a sudden it clicked in my head. I'm like, wow. So I can have 2,000, 3,000 people that have my knowledge that are going out there and getting market share. You know, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's people that you're training. You could have a digital ecosystem, a strategy that multiplies your knowledge and what you're doing in another medium to grab market share. So it's all about, like, how do you expand, you know, that idea and who you are to grow your business, right? Does that make sense there?
Yeah, and I think, like, we could talk about a million different ideas of entrepreneurship. I'd rather just, like, turn it to you guys and have you guys ask questions, because it's better that we talk about the things that you're interested in and, like, the challenges that you're facing right now in your own journeys. I think that's, like, a much easier way for us to, like, pass our knowledge on to you guys. What's up? What you got?
No, go ahead. You got that. All right. So what would you say? So right now I'm kind of looking to get like so I'm a senior now, so kind of rounding out the end. So I'm looking for a job now or an internship. So what would you say some steps are that you recommend, or both of you, if for myself to kind of get my foot in the door with a sales or real estate kind of area?
Yeah, so I would say, like, it's a very simple process to enter into the entrepreneurship game. First of all, no matter what you do, there is no easy way to get around it. The universe is not going to allow you to make millions of dollars without going through pain. So that's number one. Now, if you're going to have to endure that pain anyway, you might as well pick something that you like. So I would say number one is, like, figure out what the hell you want to do for, like, the next, in your entrepreneurship career. You can exit a business in 5-6 years and go on to the next thing, but figure out what you're going to want to be putting 70, 80 hours a week into. Like, if it's boring, it's going to be, and you don't like it, it's going to be very difficult for you to put in the amount of time that is required to succeed as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I have an exercise that I do with students, and I take them to a bookstore, and I put them in front of magazines, and I go, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to pick your favorite magazine. And they pick their favorite magazine. And I see how you pick that magazine. Why'd you pick that magazine? They go, because I love this, and I love reading this, and I love this, and I love this. And they tell you all about the magazine, right? That's how you should choose entrepreneurship. It's something that you're academically enthralled with, intellectually, you love it. You read it on your free time. Do not have a division between your free time and your business. It won't happen in entrepreneurship. It's one and the same. You know, like when I'm working, I'm having a blast. I'm having fun, right? So that's the first mistake. And going back to your question is when this is one thing I say to people that are in startups. I say, if there's one day you're not learning from what we're doing with Jack, quit. If there's one day you don't feel like, right? You've heard me say that a million times, Teddy. It works with us. I say, if you're not learning something and you're not excited, quit and go do something else because you're in the wrong place. You know, so that you have to have that kind of energy and that kind of passion, right? So obviously, a startup is a startup. If you go to an established company, you're in a cubicle, then it could take you 5 years to learn all the stuff. So I would, the more you get closer to the experience that you want to replicate, the better. So do a startup. That's where you're going to learn entrepreneurship. Starting, it's going to be chaotic, and people can't handle chaos. A lot of people go, oh my God, this is disorganized, and this is that. And they're giving me 1,000 instructions, and we're running out of money, and they didn't pay me this much. I mean, you're gonna feel that chaos. You gotta embrace that chaos and be like, how would I handle this?
And the worst thing you can do, single-handedly the worst thing you can do, and I see it all the time, is gauge the opportunities that you enter based on how much money you're going to get immediately. Yeah. You should gauge it by how much knowledge you're going to get, because that knowledge, the money comes and goes. The knowledge, once you have it, they can't take it away from you, and that's where the money comes from. Yeah. So you want to gauge the opportunity with how much can I learn from this opportunity, and is it aligned with my end goal? And like, I follow a very simple process for people that are trying to enter like entrepreneurship. Identify your goal, like whatever it is, and dream big, because again, it's like you're still gonna have to, it's gonna be a lot of work. So you might as well go for something big, in my opinion. But identify that goal, whatever it is. Then number 2 is visualize how you're going to get there. And like, if you guys are taking notes, write down the word visualization, because visualization is the key. Like, you generate your I'll have you talk about visualization afterwards. But
let's just say your imagination creates your reality. You know, if you're thirsty and you want to grab a glass of water and you're running outside and you're in the sun, what do you do first? You imagine it. You imagine it going to the refrigerator, opening the refrigerator, grabbing a glass of jar, cold water, you're pouring it in the glass. You go through these steps in your imagination to create your reality. There's no difference in a business. But you can't like visualize it, dream about it, doing it, and like stop. You know what I mean? You've got to keep going with the idea. If your idea you're not thinking about every day consistently, then there's something wrong there. Because it's got to be something you're so passionate about that it lasts. You know what I mean? It's like being in a relationship. If you're in a relationship, like your interest for that person has to be relentless. Every day it's a different person. You're perceiving a different person. You're excited. Oh my God, who's this person today? They're this and they're that and they're this. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be like that. You can't wake up the next day and be like, I'm going into this routine. You're not excited.
Yeah. So the process, I go through it like this: identify your goal, like write it down, visualize what it is that I want, and how long do I want it to take to get to that goal. Then, so you've never been through this path before. You don't know what it's going to take to get to there. So you have to visualize, like, what is my plan to get there? And just that visualization, you're probably going to come like 70, 80% of what you have to do. For me, it was like, I knew quite blatantly, I got to quit drinking, I got to quit smoking weed, or I'm not going to be able to put in the amount of time that's required to do this. So those were 2 things that were like firing off in my head that I knew I had to do if I wanted to be successful with my business. For 2 years, I pretended that wasn't a thing and I could get around that. Although in my head, I knew that was the key. I kept pretending that wasn't an issue. It wasn't until I actually, gave in to the things the universe was telling me that I started seeing the results. So part of my like visualization and plan, those were 2 things, but there was a lot more to that plan. So visualize your plan that you're going to take to get from where you are now to whatever that goal is that you've identified. And then execute that plan. Do what you said you were going to do. If you do half of it, you're going to get half of what your goal is, if that. Start executing on that plan, and what's going to happen is, again, your plan is probably going to come 70, 80% of what's required to get to your goal. But along that path, you're going to run into adversity. And that's where the boys are separated from the men, or the like hunters are separated from the gatherers, you know? Because a lot of people will go back to that comfort. They'll say like, things are getting hard, it's not working out, and they'll turn around. Where there is a will, there is a way. If you are determined to get to that goal, a solution will present itself. Every single time, no matter how big the problem is. You just have to have that mindset that no matter what falls in front of me, I am going to figure a way to get out of it. And it's funny how like the world shows you the answers, but it's going to put you through that pain so that you learn, and it gives you the exact tools that you need for the next step of your life. It's funny how it works out. So you're going to encounter that adversity and just find a way to get over it. And over time, like you're trying to get to this goal and you're going to head down this path, and you might turn right, and that might be the wrong way, and you're going to hit that adversity, and you either make a wrong decision again, but you're going to learn from each time you hit that adversity, and eventually your path is going to get like so tailored in that that path that you are on will eventually intersect with your goal. So it's just a repetitive process. Execute your plan, expect the adversity, find a way to get over the adversity, be learning along the way, and eventually if you follow that path without quitting, the only way you can fail is quitting, you will intersect with that goal. So how do you enter, like your question is like, how do I jump into real estate? It doesn't really matter what the opportunity is. To define what the goal is that you want and follow that process, I guarantee you will intersect with that goal. But if where the 99%, you know, they say it's 1%. I mean, for me, it seems like 1 in 100,000 people have what it takes. Like I've met so many people that say they want to go down this path and they just hit the adversity and they can't get through it. They go back to the comfort, to what they're used to. And that's what makes the difference.
You got to keep learning. You know, you've got to, I mean, people, you go to university, you study, and you're on this regimented plan, and really, that's the beginning. I mean, like, you know, we have a class every single day, 8 to 9, every day, and we read a book, analyze the book, and I go through each paragraph, each word, each concept. And we go, because, you know, how many books can you read in university? 100 books, 200 books? How many can you read in your lifetime? 2,000, 3,000? How fast can you learn? I mean, I was a literature teacher. My friends were like, what do you know about designing communication networks? I'm like, nothing, but I'm reading a lot, right? You know, and so you can't be afraid to be, you know, to enter into that territory of like not knowing. And you've got to have that kind of mindset, like, I will learn everything there is to learn. So I call it possibility thinking, and you know, you can talk a little bit about that, possibility and possibility thinking, right? I mean, I'm always like, as a leader, you are a possibility thinker. You think of all the possibilities, not the impossibilities. You rarely spend time on the obstacles. You're like, oh yeah, I got this, but I'm going to pass this. And that's why it's important to read biographies, because you see how other people overcame obstacles. And there's always going to be those obstacles.
And if you guys start a business and you guys start having employees, you will see people that are very good at identifying problems. But that is like not helpful at all. Like the leaders and the people that are successful are the ones that don't give a shit about the problem. They're just always going to find a solution. So that's something that we try to teach, is like be a problem solver, not a solution or a problem identifier. It's not very helpful. It's very easy to see when there's a problem in front of you. Next question. What is your question?
I was going to say, I know many people in this room kind of have these business ideas, or maybe they're, you know, have took a couple of steps forward, but have kind of gotten to the point where maybe, you know, they don't have the capital to start a business. And you mentioned something about brokering deals and possibly like leveraging debt. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Maybe, you know, how you don't have to have money to start a business and other ways to get
I can answer that. Like, when anybody comes to me and says, oh, you need money to make money, I immediately say that's not an entrepreneur. That's the first thing goes in my mind. Oh, I need to raise money to do this business. I immediately go, that's not an entrepreneur. Because I believe that with a great idea, that's all you need. That is money. That is capital, right? Because you now have the power with that great idea to tell one other person that goes, wow, I believe in this. Steve Jobs in the garage. You know, he had an idea, he told Steve, then he told another one, he did another one, and they believed. And they said, so if you're a leader and you're mission oriented and you have an idea, the money will come. You know what I mean?
And there's a lot of other things you can use as currency other than money. You can use equity of your business and the futures of your business as currency to pay people and get things done. You can use knowledge. You know, if you have experience and someone wants to learn from you, you can utilize that to pay people in the front end.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of asking. Like, what are the other opportunities that you have to start a business? Maybe equity or knowledge, and maybe talk a little bit more on that.
And I think I really like the pre-construction model, and it's a real estate model for development, but you can use it in any business. Like, if you have an idea, so many people, they put all these resources into building the website and getting the teams together, and they don't even know if they can sell it. They haven't even brought it to market yet. So for example, if I want to purchase, let's go back to the music festival that I failed at, the first venture that I ever did. Thought I needed $1.5 million or close to $2 million to hire the acts, to put together the stage, to get the venue, and get all those things. And I didn't even know if the concert sold yet. If I could go back, what I would do is I would put a couple $1,000s into a marketing video for what the business is going to be, what the opportunity is, the music festival. That would be my capital investment. And then I would go out and sell tickets. 2025, we have a festival coming. And see how many people, now there's going to be people that are they don't even have the acts book yet. So I'm not going to buy a ticket. But there's going to be people that are down and are relate to your idea and are excited for it. So go out and sell tickets and raise a couple $100,000. Then book your headliner. Use that capital from the ticket sales that you've got, and you're generating this momentum to book your headliner. Now you have a headliner. Now you can raise the ticket sales. And just keep running that system until you've raised all the money through selling on the front end. So that model works extremely well. It's a very low risk model for entering the entrepreneurship game. That's how I do all
There's
my
a lot of
businesses
case
now.
studies you guys can read about startups that start with no money. I have a friend of mine, and I love this story. And he was in his 20s, and he started studying this highway in Boston of all the cars moving through. And he's a mathematical mind. He's a lawyer, kind of very concrete, sequential thinker, and really good at financial spreadsheets. And he was counting the cars, and he bought a farm. He didn't buy a farm, sorry. He optioned the land of a farm. So the farm was worth millions and millions of dollars. And so I said, how much did you pay the option on it? And so he paid an option, which means that he had a certain amount of time to sell the land and give the guy the money back. So he paid him $50,000 that he got on loans. He got some friends, and he gathered the money together. He paid the option in real estate. And then he did a master plan with a friend of his that was in university. So he did all these stores and put the logos and the names on all these stores, and he developed a little master plan and sold it to Walmart, Cabela's, all these different retail stores. He sold the whole entire thing, made $200 million, and then he paid the guy that he owed the money to in land, his own land, that was now worth more money. Yeah, no, it was a great, and I said, Jose, I'm just a dumb farmer. And I said, no, you're not. And he jokes around about it, but he would just do it over and over again. So I buy oceanfront surfing and fishing properties. And people look at me like I have 3 heads. Because they're like, you're nuts. Nobody's ever going to come out here. You know what I mean? Why would you ever do that? Dirt roads. I have farms you got to go an hour and a half by boat. It's like being on an island. You know what I mean? But I know the type of person that looks at that and goes, oh my God. You know what I mean? So I'm a market maker. I've created a destination before. It didn't exist. There was no name to it. There was no tourists. There was no nothing. So you have to have such, my mother and my father literally called my sister one time. I'm the eldest of 6. It's like, you've got to intervene with your brother because he's buying this land in the middle of nowhere after I sold a couple companies. Is that because I think he's gone off the deep end buying this land? No, you need to get him a psychologist. There's something wrong with him. Parents are parents, right? So I'm like, what are you talking about? I know what I'm doing. I see the models. Obviously you can't, shoot from the hip, get the data, right? Like this guy that was counting the cars, right? Get the data, get the models, back up your things with information, right? But if you have a conviction, right? Like Warren Buffett's great at it. You know what I mean? His favorite thing is like, be greedy when people are fearful and be fearful when people are greedy. Like, make sure that you have that north and that nothing is swaying you, because everybody will tell you why not to do it. Everybody will tell you. Steve Jobs, they would call it the Steve Jobs reality distortion field. Here he comes with his twisted reality distortion. He's outside of reality is what they would say. And he would make it happen time and time again, right? So you have to have that. Part of being an entrepreneur is having that strong conviction and not letting anything sway that.
And I'll talk about two other models that I think are like good ways to enter entrepreneurship. One is being just like I call it a manufacturer rep, and you're like essentially a broker. Find a really good product, negotiate a commission plan for that product, and then go out and sell it. Everyone needs leads. Everyone needs to generate business for their company. So it's very valuable to be able to say, I can source clients for you. And then take that commission that you would have gotten for selling that product and reinvest it into your next employee and develop a team of salesmen that are moving a product. That's a very easy way to start a business that is low capital, very valuable to any business.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine, his name's Gary Keller. He has a real estate company called Keller Williams, and he wrote a book, The Real Estate Agent. Look up Gary Keller, the book. And he'll actually teach you how to go from being a broker, for you that you like real estate, into forming an organization. From one person to, so you want to read books that help you from, you as an individual to an organization. So that book, The Millionaire Agent or something like that.
And the third model that I'll talk about, and I wish that I had a model like this. I have some buddies and we've done some podcasts with guys that are doing really well at online businesses. But if you can figure out a way to, again, with that like manufacturing rep model, it's very easy to automate that online. So if you can take a sales process, like this is how we grab attention of a client and put them into a funnel. This is how we get them to put their information in, then walk through that sales process. And you can automate that sales process online, very low capital. You're not dependent on employees, which employees are the hardest part of the business. You become a therapist, motivating people and keeping them in tune with the idea. Whereas if you can automate that business, you don't have to rely on that. So like you see like the biggest companies that are getting the highest valuations are software companies. They're building a software that works on its own, and then they're creating a digital marketing strategy that finds clients, nurtures them, and converts them all automatically and sells this product. And this entire business is running and producing income independent of people. So those models are super, super cool. If you wanted to look into that.
Go ahead.
So you all talk a lot about mentorship and how important it is, and I think a lot of the time, especially for me, like I'm specifically trying to find a good mentor in a certain industry, like an industry like for my business that I work in. How would you go about, like, do you have any suggestions on finding good mentors and how to approach people that maybe could be a mentor, but you're not really sure how to, get them to work with you? That can be.
Find the guy that is like the example of what you want to be and is doing the things that you want to strive to be, and then find a way to get next to them and absorb from them. But I will say, like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, if you're afraid to approach that person and they don't know you at first, so originally, like, they're not going to give you the attention, but keep on them. And like, if they're an entrepreneur and they're successful and you stay on them, they're going to respect that, and that's how they're going to give you their time.
You'd be amazed at how many people will open the door, but they will put you to the test. Like I have a lot of people that come, I want to work with you, I want to learn this, and then I put them through a little test because we don't want to waste our time, and I have mentors as well that I went through that. Nobody makes it on their own. I have 7 guys that pull my ear and like, what are you doing? Go, so like being open to learning, because you want to be with people that you're sharing. I'm learning from Jack and all his team just as much as they're learning from me. I tell my own children, I'm 1% of a mentor for you guys. Go get the 99%. So people that are successful will want to share that. But they want that genuine interest and that authenticity. And you want to, also one thing that's very important for you guys is, and we're teaching a class right now on it, is personal branding. You know, like, who are you? What's your mission? What's your purpose? Have a killer LinkedIn. Read about LinkedIn because that is the business platform right now. But also your name should be out there. You know, when people Google you, you should know, wow, this guy loves this and he loves this and he loves this. And also something that the professor, I read a little bit about some of the stuff on the internet about you. And like when you talk about sustainability and you talk about like good causes, environmental and all of that, like have a cause that you care about. Because, you know, like I've had friends of mine that are pretty, you know, significant people in their field, and they always have a great cause. They're always helping other people. They're always doing something environmental. They're always, so like that can be a big door opener for you guys. Like being involved in a nonprofit. You know what I mean? That, because that shows an entrepreneur like, okay, this person really cares. I really want to help. You know, you're just not in it for just yourself. You're actually making the world a little bit of a better place, right?
Yeah, that impact-driven cause branding is like really important. It'll build a lot of momentum for you, and you'll get a lot of free shit. You know, like people will help you out because you have a good impact. But I'll say like a good rule to follow when you're looking for mentors is like do 5 or 6 things for that person before you ask them for anything. Yeah. You know, like be a giver first, and the people will reciprocate.
So question back here. My name's Chase Davis. I run multiple businesses. I'm a professional right now, and I'm doing right now currently running a 6-figure e-commerce business. And my question is based more around how do I know? So I don't really see myself graduating, and if I do, I don't see myself using my degree. So how do I know when to cut off?
Pull the ripcord?
Yeah, a little bit. How do I know when to cut off school to the extent of I know it's taking time away from my business where I could be doing 10x what I'm doing now?
I'll let you take that
I
one.
think that like school's not just about, you know, learning business and after you do after school. I think school, you develop a lot of friendships. You know, I think that school teaches you social responsibility. There's so many things that school teaches you that has nothing to do with like just driving your business. That, you know, I would just encourage you to like take leadership roles and to develop friendships and develop social skills and do things above and beyond. You know what I mean? Not just look at the business for business. Like I have incredible friends that were in my fraternity that I, you know, hung out with in college. They're my network. In high school, I went to a boarding school. You know, so don't just like because you don't want to be that guy that is like just the tunnel vision and then you're not, like, I'm a little bit unorthodox with school. You know, obviously I studied literature. Like I would take art classes. I would take like all the classes you can possibly take, all the electives. I stayed every summer in college. You know what I mean? Because look at Steve Jobs. I love to use this example. Steve Jobs, the reason the iPhone, who has an iPhone here? You have one? Okay, but can I see one? The reason that the iPhone is round like this and beautiful, it was one class that Steve Jobs took, and it was a calligraphy class before he dropped out. And in the calligraphy class, he loved the curves. And he said the computer doesn't have to be square. The computer can be curved, and it can be, and he got into aesthetics, right? So there's classes that you don't know, like everybody like, oh, this is never gonna help me. Why am I studying this? You never know. You know what I mean? But being a well-rounded person, and I believe in being a you know, kind of a Renaissance person. You don't want to be sitting in a conversation and like all you talk about is business. You're going to be pretty boring. You know, but if you're talking about like plants and you're talking about art and you're talking about all these different things, wow, this guy's super interesting. You know what I mean? So college, what a great environment, you know, where you're just like, you can do all kinds of things and talk to different people and get interest. Like take advantage of that, right? So don't just think like, oh, I'm doing this and this is what I'm going to do. And, like enjoy this beautiful time because it is an incredible, magical time. College.
And I wish I knew this in college. Like, you can do a lot of business at your college and you can leverage the hell out of the resources that the college has. They've been around here for a long time. They have an impact within the community. They have a lot of connections. I didn't know to be like wheeling and dealing within my college. And then leaving 4 or 5 years later, I clicked and I had to go back and develop these relationships with my own school to help them get me influence in the community where I could have had a lot more pull if I had done that while I was in college. And you can align your brand with your college. It's gonna give you a lot of credibility. You're gonna build a lot more momentum. So like leverage the resources that you have while you're here. It might not be getting lectures in the classroom. It might be going to the dean or someone that's aligned with your messaging or your brand and figuring out a way that your guys' paths align and utilizing the massive impact and influence that this institution has to your advantage.
One of the things that Jack did that I was very impressed with is he took me to Mass Maritime. We drove there. He's like, I want you to meet this professor. And we sat with this professor. He's retired. What a character. And we sat there and had this incredible conversation. And Jack, I could tell the relationship that he had with Jack. It was a very special relationship. And I have teachers that I had that I'm still friends with, right? That I'm like, they said one thing, one message that was an instant, that was 5-6 seconds of my life, but it was transformative and it changed my entire life. There are things that people you're going to run into, they're going to change your entire life with one thing they say. But you have to have the alertness for it. You got to be ready for it. You know what I mean? And so those are the things that like sometimes we take those for granted, those things. If I was to ask you guys right now, just think about this question for a second, like give me the 10 most successful seconds of your entire life, right? It could be a minute, could be an hour, could be, but give me that feeling of those 10 seconds where you felt the most successful you've ever been in your entire life. Think about that for a second. Because it's those moments, right? Those special moments that define your life. It's not an hour, 2, 3 days, months, years. It's those tiny little moments that reveal the way the rest of your life is going to go that give you those messages, right? I mean, you think about like, you run into the love of your life and you're going to get married and you're going to pop the question. You're like, you have a revelation, an epiphany, a sudden moment that you're like, I'm going to get married to this person the rest of my life. And so that level of intuition and having that awareness and that readiness, right, is where learning occurs, right? It's about that kind of deep concentration and self-reflection and being ready to accept that message, right? So what a privilege it is for you to be in this environment. Don't ever underestimate anything or anyone or any situation. Be ready to absorb. And you'll be amazed at how that world, you start to bring in those things. Like, it's no accident when people call me out of the blue. I'm going to go meet Tim Draper. Tim Draper started Skype, started all these businesses. You can look him up online, $2 billion worth. They call me out of the blue like, Jose, we want you to sit down at a dinner. So I'm on my way to Boston tomorrow, right? How did he get to me? How do you know who I was? How do you know what I do? Like, it's not an accident. I'm attracting it, right? I'm building it. It's part of my brand. It's part of my message. It's part of my awareness when I talk to somebody. I talked to this guy for an hour. And he said, Jose, I got somebody for you to meet. You know what I mean? Because I was aware. I was ready. You know what I mean? And so be deep about your messages with people. In college, it's, like Jack, he'll take me out to the bars and this. I'm like, I'm not really having a good time. Because I want to engage people. I want to learn about people. So I want to be in a situation. We were just with a famous artist down in Miami. She's an incredible person, right? And you were asking question after question about the significance of her paintings, right? And so it was fascinating because she was ready. She was ready to go into that deep conversation and take the risk and tell us her vulnerability, where her strength comes from, where her inspiration comes from, her fears. She just went all in. So developing that just opens the world. Don't be like, oh, I'm vulnerable, so I'm just going to protect myself. Like, what does that do? You know what I mean? That's just going to shut somebody off that doesn't get to see you. You know, your strength comes from that vulnerability. Even in business, like I've been with friends that sit in the business being like, they look around, they go, I'm definitely the dumbest person in this room. And everybody laughs, goes, holy shit, no, he's the strongest. Because he's so comfortable with not knowing.
And like one of the best skills you can learn to follow up on that, especially in sales, is how to ask good questions. That's how you're going to identify people's needs, build rapport with people, connect with people, identify opportunities, recognize where there's connections, is by being able to ask really good questions. So that's like top tier skill. And it looked like you had a follow-up question.
It was. So school's about learning new opportunities and network. Why don't you agree some areas would have a stronger and more opportunity to network? Like let's say for Miami example, Miami's a huge city, 1 million businesses going on, 1 million people, so much is happening. Why not go to an environment that's more lively like that than a college in a sense?
Listen, man, there's no right answer here. Like you gotta trust your convictions. If everything's pulling at you saying like, why am I here? Like there's more opportunity that lies ahead. Then go with your convictions. But the case that I think both of us are trying to make is like, there's opportunity everywhere. Like you have to look at, there's 100% value here. But just weigh your options. If your convictions are, I have more opportunity here, and why are you staying here? Like ask yourself, like, why are you here and you're not there? Is it a limitation that's being instilled on you because your parents are telling you to stay or because your peers are telling you it's the right path? Then like, that's not really a good reason to be here. And then look at like, what are the pros of being here? And then weigh them with the pros versus cons of going somewhere else and then make your decision. There is no like right answer to that.
And I think it's like really studying like, how committed are you to your internal journey, right? Like Nelson Mandela was in jail for, 30 years, I think. Imagine the internal journey that he went through being jailed unlawfully. He was in a jail, 6 by 6 feet with closed walls, right? Think about the discipline that he needed to have. Tibetan monks, when all they do is sit in silence and they meditate and they eat, sleep, and meditate, right? So, like, how advanced are you in your internal journey? And how much momentum can you build with that internal journey? It's not about the external. I think now, get that knowledge base and really travel and get to know yourself more than your external is not going to change your internal.
Right.
You know what I mean? The way that you build yourself is going to help you to perceive the external in a more powerful way. Does that make sense? You don't I don't go to a place and like, I want to study as much as I can how I'm perceiving and how I can open my perception to a place. You see what I mean? I'm not expecting the place to influence me in a way that's changing my internal. It's kind of the opposite. I need to be a student and become more and more aware and have the discipline to be like, I'm really going to study my environment here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, your internal mindset really does generate your external reality. And like that's why that process is so important, because like if you're committed to that plan, your reality is going to change to meet that goal. And like, he hates when I talk about this stuff because he thinks it's woo. He believes in it, but he doesn't like being looked at like a hippie. But I like to talk about this like experiment that they did. I think it was called the Institute of Noetic Sciences. They're in California. They took a room. I'll just give this real quick. They took a room and they divided it up into 9 quadrants, like a tic-tac-toe board, right? And each square had a corresponding number attached to it. So it's like a tic-tac-toe board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can you envision that? And at the top of the room, there was a plant grow light, like a light for growing plants. It was attached to a random number generator. So a random number generator is like a computerized coin flip. And I don't know if you guys have done like the experiment, you probably did it in middle school or something, where you flip a coin and you tally if it landed on heads or tails. And the longer that you do it, the closer the distribution becomes to 50-50, right? As expected. So when they did this experiment, their data set was 1 to 9. And as expected, the longer that they ran the experiment and flipped the coin, the more even it chose 9 as it did to 1, as it did to 5, the closer that distribution became to even, as expected. What they did then was they introduced a houseplant into one of the squares. And that houseplant needs light to grow. And what they found, which was profound, what they observed was that the data, the majority of the time, would start skewing dramatically to the square with the houseplant on it. There's no connection between that random number generator and the plant, but somehow, I mean, maybe it's accident, maybe it's like coincidence, but when they observed it, somehow this plant was like, the implications are that it's basically bending probabilities at the quantum level in the basement layer of reality to get this light that it needs. Like, and they're like proving essentially manifestation. Like, if you are determined with everything to achieve your goal, reality and the probabilities of the world are going to start bending in your favor. But if you're like half in and half out, like, you are going to be at the mercy of the external. So start generating your reality from the inside out. Does that make sense what I said?
Yeah. And I think, you know, like I talk a lot about like language patterns, you know, and so like when you meet somebody, see their language, study their language patterns and study yours. Like when people say, oh, I'm frustrated, I can't do this, and they use negative language, you know, or people that talk about other people and problems and this versus like ideas versus like positive things. Like, you're going to find that you're going to like meet people that have a lot of limitations and other people that, you know, they don't have those limitations. And so understanding your language patterns is something very important as well, because you've got to be relentless about that mindset. And I always talk about like happiness is a discipline. Why? Because it's not every day you're going to get up and be happy. But if you get up every day and go, this is going to be an extraordinary day. I'm going to be super inspired. And like, I practice this. I get up every day and I'm pumped. You know what I mean? I'm going 100, he knows, I'm going 100 miles an hour. And then my kids are like, oh God, Mom, please. I can't handle him today. You know, I'll drink my coffee and I'm like, bam, let's go. Right? So happiness is a discipline, and it's like disciplining your mind, right? To have positive thoughts. It's like, I was reading a book about Michael Phelps, and I was a swimmer in college. And so imagine training 20 years for one 50-second race. Do you think that the day he gets up, he can afford like, oh, I don't feel quite right? 20 years, one race. So he's got to train his mind that every day, no matter what, is the greatest day of his life. You know what I mean? Because you never know when that's your opportunity. And you've been preparing that mindset for that opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the phrase that you've taught me is like, which instant do you want to become your eternity? Like, really all that exists is the present. So pick the instant that you want to experience for the rest of your life, whatever that is, how you feel, who you want to be around, like the lifestyle that you want to live, and then live it. Like, why would you choose to live any other way? And I see so many people like living unhappily and like in a way that they wouldn't want to be living, and it's their choice. They could change it just like that. And it's it's not that easy. Like, some people are so deep with their limitations that it's difficult to get out of that cycle, but really they do have the choice to get out of it, and like pick that instant that you want to be your eternity and live it every single day.
You mentioned that you used to drink, you used to smoke, and it took you a while to kind of make that jump and decide not to do it, and maybe, I don't know, like with friends, and maybe you weren't hanging out with the right people. Like, what made you make the jump and actually say, I'm gonna do this and that it's gonna happen?
Well, I knew it was limiting me. Now I realize now I don't miss it at all, because like I realize how powerful the mind is at like generating that reality, and I don't want to cloud any of my brain, because like So I went 3 years when I started my company without drinking or smoking or doing anything like that. Then last summer, I was like, okay, I've done it for like a while now. Like maybe I can go back to this. And I realized like I literally watched the like power of my mind dissipate from my body again. So last week was 1 year again. Last September, no, it's like 2 days ago. September 1st was when I quit last year again. And I've done another year. And it took me like 6, 7, 8 months to get back to that like manifestation power that I had prior to that. But I mean, it's like, it took me training and practice to get back to the point where I could like, because I learned how to socialize and be extroverted, like drinking and partying. Now I'm like, I mean, this weekend I did 2 nights till 5 a.m. in Miami, like ripping it up. I was partying with Quavo this weekend, you know, like we were going after it, but I wasn't drinking. Like I was talking business with guys. I was networking with guys, like artists, with musicians, like, and I'm on a level that I can like, you know, I'm not making a fool out of myself. I'm building trust with these people. Like it has a lot of influence and power to have the, to be grounded enough to not give in to what everyone else is doing. And like, the best advice I got from an early mentor that really clicked that into my brain, he was like, if you want to be successful, look around at your peers and do the exact opposite of what they're doing. So like that was what I did, you know? Like I was like, okay, this is really obviously limiting a lot of people. Now, some people can moderate it. Me, I go 100% on anything I do. So like, doesn't work out for me, but might not be for everyone. But I think that it's like, there's a lot of things that cloud your mind, and the more that you can get your like mind pure, the more powerful you'll be. And it's crazy to me that like most people after 16, 17 years old will never again go back to that childlike purity and intuition. And it's like, almost seems like, maybe I'm a conspiracist, but it seems like there's like a reason for that, you know, because like seeing the power that you have without it, it's like, I don't know if it would be good for the powers that be if everyone, you know, wielded that. But
yeah, so along with like the drinking and smoking thing, what were like some other habits that you like decided to cut out in order to get like to the next level?
Those are the biggest ones. Like literally everything followed after that. When I got that out, it was like everything else became easy. I still have bad habits, but I have like ruthless ADD, like worst procrastinator ever. So like I just have like, you know, little like habits. Like every single day I wake up and do some sort of work. Like I put myself into an environment that doesn't have a lot of distractions and like get work done, make calls. Like those are habits that I've instilled. Like doing a to-do list is like a habit that keeps me on track. There's like little habits like that. But if you can quit, like, in my opinion, if you can quit drinking and smoking, like you're gonna be set.
I think one of the things that I was lucky because I was an athlete. So I've been a competitive athlete pretty much all through my early teens and late and into college. And like, for me, I understand my energy levels. You know, like this is really late for me. I would be chilling right now. But I get up at 4 in the morning and work till 8. That's kind of my sweet spot. So I get 4 hours of work there. By the time 12 rounds around, I've got 8 hours in, right? And then I try and make my decisions from 4 to 8. And I don't make any other decisions after 8 because I have input contamination, right? So if I have a major decision to make, I don't make it at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon because I'm already contaminated. I'm not at my ultimate, you know, thinking ability. So I'll wait till the next day to think about that decision. You see what I mean? So timing your energy level and your most efficient, right, brain power, thought power is key, right? And sticking to it. You know, if there's people that are nocturnal, but sometimes I question that nocturnal, they're not really at their full energy level. You know what I mean? Like I'll time my meetings for a specific time that I know I'm at my highest energy level. Like I'll never do a major meeting after 12 because I could have eaten lunch and then I'll slow down on my energy level. So I'll always like, you know, there's a lot of business guys that do this. So studying your energy level is key because you can work 1 hour and do what people takes 8 hours to do, you can do it in 1 hour because you're in that level of concentration. And getting that out of the way during your day is key. That makes sense?
We're probably like getting close to the end of the time here, but if you guys have more, like we got nowhere to be. I love answering questions like this. So if you have more questions, like if you have somewhere you have to be, don't feel offended. We won't be offended if you gotta go.
When you're working, and you mentioned earlier that your mind tricks you into thinking you're productive. I personally struggle with this. I don't know if anyone else does. Like I'll like throw on a podcast and like, oh, I'm being productive, but deep down I really know I'm not being productive. What do you personally do yourself to get over that obstacle of your brain tricking you into being productive? Do you like write something down? Or?
I think like kind of for me at least, like just going through the motions, I'm always gonna do less than I plan to do. So I think like a good practice is to like plan what you're going to do ahead of time and then stick to your plan. So say this is what I want to execute, this is the input that is going to get me to that goal, and then actually do it. So then you can hold yourself accountable to that. That's like a good practice that you can go through. But for me, like I just have to be, I can't be in my room because within 10 minutes I'm like, oh, I got to do my laundry, and I get distracted. Like the library is a really good place to work, like for me at least, because it's super quiet. Like when I find myself in the library, it's tough to bring myself there. But when I get there, I get a lot of work done because there's very little distractions.
You got to give yourself metrics. Like, and so as an entrepreneur, like we always have revenue as target goals, right? One of the exercises that I do when I teach entrepreneurship is like, okay, you got 6 months. I'm only going to allow you to work 3 hours for 6 months. What are you going to do to make $1 million? And people get stumped. They go, what do you mean? I go, you've only got 3 hours. We're going to fool around. And I'll do it for a week. But people are like, we're just going to fool around. We're going to go surf. We're going to go fish. I'm not going to let you work. You've only got 1 hour to work and you got to make $1 million. What are you going to do? So they start thinking, I would do this. I would call this person. You know, they start getting anxiety and they totally become so productive in that hour, right? That they write down all the things that are going to be super high impact, right? And that are going to bring in that money. Go, imagine if you did that for, 4 or 5 hours a day, every day. You know what I mean? So that's a way to kind of create yardsticks in your head. Like I always have a number in my head. And I'm always like, I have to make this much money by December. I always have a number. If you don't have a number, you won't get it. You know what I mean? So you have to like create processes to make sure you're hitting those goals. So have specific, measurable goals and put the steps in place no matter what you're doing.
Like I don't want to be working 80 hours a week anymore, so I try to put myself, the calls that I get on, like I don't want to, on a call, have, there has to be a possibility that I can make at least 6 figures on that phone call. I want to be in a call that there's a chance to be making over $1 million. But then if I do enough of those calls, like one of them is going to hit. My conversion rate's probably like 1 out of like 10, 15 of those like opportunities. And we have a sales team that generates those opportunities. But by the time they come to me, like I want to be spending my time on an hour-long call that has the opportunity to make at least 6 figures on that phone call. Now, it took a lot of hours to get to that communication level to where I can close a 6-figure, $1 million deal on a single phone call. But you don't have to, you can figure out how to do that over 20 years, or you can go down to Panama and spend 8 months with Jose Goldner and learn, find a guy that is doing it, doing $1 million deals like in a meeting, and learn his skills and then apply those. And within 2-3 years, within 2 years I got to that point. So that's like the kind of the mentorship thing, is like putting your ego aside and like learning from someone, because you can put yourself in another echelon really quickly by gathering the knowledge that they've picked up over the last 20, 30 years.
I noticed that none of the girls have asked any questions. Any questions?
No comment?
Put you guys on the spot. Come on.
Nothing?
I have like the goal, like I have like that entrepreneur mindset, and right now I'm trying to like solidify exactly what I want to do, because I'm not sure, like there's just so many different things that I want to do and want to pursue, but I know I can't do all of them. Yeah. Do you have any guidance to how I figure that out?
Well, I'll use one of my mentors, and works with Jose at the bank, Rod Robertson, talks about the like Navy SEAL 80-20 rule. Like if you wait, the Navy SEALs, when they are 80% like sure about something, they make a move. If things are moving way too fast, and if you wait till you're 100% sure, things will move and you'll miss opportunity. So like find something that you're 80% sure about and then just jump in. Like it might not be like where you end up in 5 years, but like the worst thing you can do is sit there like waiting for the perfect opportunity. Like just jump in on something. You're going to gain a lot of knowledge and you're going to get closer to figuring it out, like what your actual purpose is.
Yeah, and entrepreneurship, you know, I love to say this, like out of 10 things that I've tried, I bet I failed at 9. You know what I mean? And like you just have to be so resilient and like not look at failure like, but there are things that I failed at, you know, and like 3-4 years later, they were relevant. And it was like, oh my God, that's why I went bankrupt over here, to use it over here. You know what I mean? So there's things that you can embark on that teach you things that you think are like, well, that didn't work, but then it becomes totally relevant to your new business. Like digital, I had a digital agency. We did digital advertising back in the day. And everybody was like, what do I need a website? Back then. And I was like, oh my God. And I just couldn't break through the learning curve of why people needed a website. Imagine, right? Today it's like, you don't exist if you don't have a website. But it was so slow. But then like years later, it was like, wow, I was trying to convince people back then and now everybody's like doing it. Now I'm like, I'm done with that. But then it became relevant, right? So never have the mentality of like, oh, I did this business and I failed and you don't have another arrow in your quiver. You do. But what he's saying is very important, like go out and just do it, right? Try it and go all the way and you're going to learn. And if you don't make it, do it again. And don't ever let your mind, you know, limit you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.